Hey guys, I'm back as promised. We're outside just for a little change up. Alright, hopefully the connection is fine. Let us go ahead and go into part 4 of Nehemiah. And with this, we talked a little bit about the chronological order of the events and how things are placed within the Bible. Sometimes it's sometimes it's not chronological between books and even within the book, as we have witnessed in the last book of Ezra. Because right now what we are doing is we are reading the same time that Ezra was arriving into Jerusalem and Judah. This is also what Nehemiah is recalling and writing down at his time. So we did talk about Nehemiah's reign and how he is already governor at this point, or he had served as governor for 12 years. And now we are just being introduced to this time when Ezra the priest comes to Jerusalem. And we remember Ezra, he came in almost a little bit the opposite of Nehemiah. He came in with full force, letting everybody know that he is the priest that is going to serve Jerusalem and offer up prayers and sacrifices for the people. So we're going to read about that here, and it will sound a little bit familiar to what we did read when we talked about Ezra. Just forewarning, but slightly different. Let's go ahead and read this quote here. This is a nice one. It says, "Mahomet made the people believe that he could call a hill to him, and from top of it offer up his prayers for the observers of his law. The people assembled. Mahomet called to the hill to come to him again and again, and when the hill stood still, he was never whit abashed, but said, 'If the hill will not come to Mahomet, Mahomet will go to the hill.'" And this is from Proverbially If the Mountains Will Not by Francis Bacon, 1561 to 1626. And with this, as a little bit of a preface, Francis Bacon, he was not a theologian, but he was, what do you say, I didn't actually prepare for this, but he was I'm going to look it up because my words, you guys, have left me. Francis Bacon. It's going to be such a obvious thing when I say a philosopher. I'm sorry. He was a philosopher that really focused on the physical, what is seen, what is proven, that type of thing. So it is interesting how we are learning about Bible and a lot of things that seem to be a little bit mystical and a little bit hidden, and then we're pairing it with these quotes by Francis Bacon, who really was an observer of the physical, and he liked to have physical evidence and physical backing behind everything. Nonetheless, he was a great philosopher, and this quote really reminisces on the fact that reaching God, or petitioning to God, praying to God, serving God in all ways, shapes, and forms requires a little bit of work. Alright, God is not going to necessarily make it so easy for you to have all your prayers answered, for you to have forgiveness at every turn and every waking moment. It does take a lot of effort, and it does take us to make the first step and the first move when it comes to inquiring of the Lord, asking things of Him, and praying for others, especially praying for others, offering sacrifices, asking for forgiveness, as mentioned. So it does take a little bit of effort on our parts, if not a lot of effort, okay? And the funny thing here is that he made the people believe with his great power as a human being. I'll put it like that, okay? He was very much a human being, that he could move mountains, and the people believed him. So that was their first mistake, because only the Lord above can go ahead and make that situation happen, and it was just not going to be done for them at that time. So with that, though, it just is a little bit nod to the first move that we have to make and the effort that needs to go into appealing and pleasing the Lord, especially if that relationship has been faltering, and even when that relationship has been constructed, right? This was Prophet Muhammad, right? His most graceful servant. He was not just, the Lord himself was not just going to move the mountain for him. He had to then go up to the mountain. So this was an interesting little part, and I'm sure that something like this did take place. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. With that, we're going to talk about a bit of effort that takes place during Ezra's entrance, and of course carrying out with the words of Nehemiah here. It says, "After the wall had been rebuilt, I had set the doors in place. The gatekeepers, the musicians, and the Levites were appointed. Now the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not yet been rebuilt." So again, showing just about that time before Ezra arrives, when everything was still kind of in shambles. They did their best to restore the temple and things like that, and the gates, but the houses, everything was in shambles as mentioned. And then it goes into here. I found the genealogical. This should be genealogical record. Hold on. It says geological. Let me find genealogical. I just need the spelling. Such a difficult word. Genealogical. Okay. Let's add this in here. It's been a long week, you guys. Can you tell? Can you tell at all? Anyways, I found the genealogical record of those who had been the first to return. This is what I found written here. And the interesting part, you guys, I'm going to read the portion, right? But it's the same exact numbers and the same exact listing of names that was in Ezra. So this just goes to show how it's correct in Ezra and it's correct here. So this really was the genealogical record. And if you want to look at the full thing, of course it's available to you in chapter 7, but I'm just, going to summarize, just list a few names here. Anyways, there are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of exiles whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had taken captive. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town, in company with Zerubbabel, Joshua, Nehemiah, which is the governor, Azariah, Rehemiah, Nahamani, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mispereth, Bigvai, Nehum, and Bani. Okay. And it says here the list of the men of Israel. We have the descendants of Azgad, 2,322. The men of Anathoth, 128. The men of Lod, Hadid, and Ono, 721. We have some temple servants. We also have the descendants of Keros, Sia, and Padon. We also have some descendants of Solomon. The whole company numbered 42,360. Besides their 7,337 male and female slaves, they also had 245 male and female singers. So if this sounds familiar, it's because it is exactly written like this in Ezra from the same genealogical record. It says, continuing, some of the heads of the families contributed to the work. The governor gave to the treasury 1,000 derricks of gold, 50 bowls, and 530 garments for priests. So, on the first day of the 7th month, Ezra the priest brought out the law before the assembly, which was made up of men and women, and all who were able to understand. The Levites, Jeshua, Bani, Sherebiah, Jamin, Akub, Shabbathai, Hodiah, Messiah, Kalita, Azariah, Jezabad, Hanan, and Peliah instructed the people in the law while the people were standing there. The whole company that had returned from the exile built temporary shelters and lived in them. From the days of Joshua, son of Nun, until that day, the Israelites had not celebrated like this, and the joy was very great. They celebrated the festival for 7 days, and on the 8th day, in accordance with the regulation, there was an assembly. So wonderful. Just again, take a little notice of the effort that goes in, right? The amount of people that have to come together, how everybody has to be stationed and assigned in terms of Levites, right? How we have the priests, we have the teachers of the law. There also is actual monetary funding, right, from the treasury being given out. Gold, bowls, garments, right? It takes a bit of effort to praise and glorify and give joy and grace to the Lord. And you also have a little bit of self-sacrifice. So what they're getting ready to do is celebrate the Sabbath. If they haven't already, it just says festival. So, I know they did celebrate the Sabbath when we read Ezra, but they're getting ready for their celebration and festival. And it was a command from the law of Moses to go ahead and live in temporary shelters during this time, much like you would at like some kind of festival or camp out. So that's what took place. So a little bit of self-sacrifice, right? Instead of rebuilding the houses, we really have people coming together in the most authentic and, how do I say this, like they're living in a shelter from the most authentic and simple way. I guess that wasn't the word I was looking for, but simplistic way. All right, really stripping of all the material focuses and really focusing on the praise and the worship and the dedication of certain material luxuries to the Lord. All right, and I had to throw this in here, you guys, because it says here on the 8th day, in accordance with the regulation, there was an assembly, and today is the 8th. So as I was reading it, I was like, oh, I'm going to read this on the 8th. So that's why I did my best to come on here and read it today. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been such a big deal, but that's how the timing works, so I thought I might as well share it. It says here, on the 24th day of the same month, the Israelites gathered together, fasting and wearing sackcloth, and putting dust on their heads. Those of Israelite descent separated themselves from all the foreigners. They stood in their places and confessed their sins and the sins of their ancestors. Alright, so we remember this moment. It doesn't talk about the dramatics of Ezra from Nehemiah's point of view, but it does show that everybody came together with great worship and great joy. And then after you experience so much greatness and joy, it's just a natural way that your brain chemistry works. You're down to, take a dive and take a little pitfall and get into a bit of a slump of sadness and reflection. That's just how our natural bodies and minds operate. And this is what took place here, where they really realized after reading the law and celebrating that they weren't doing things as well as they should. So this is that moment here where they did separate themselves from all the foreigners, right? Those who worshipped other gods. And I like this part too. Not only did they confess, right? Making the first move, owning up to your mistake, and confessing, they also confessed for the sins of their ancestors. So we talked a little bit about worrying about yourself and your household, right? Worrying about your bloodline too is also acceptable and can be grouped into that, I say worry, but concern or confessing and asking forgiveness or asking for repair. That's also a very important part of worrying about yourself and worrying about your household. Also taking care of your bloodline as well. It says here they prayed, right? They prayed and they confessed. They said, "You are the Lord God who chose Abram and brought him out of the Chaldeans and named him Abraham. But they, our ancestors, became arrogant and stiff-necked, and they did not obey your commands. They refused to listen and failed to remember the miracles you performed among them. So you delivered them into the hands of their enemies. Because of our sins, its abundant harvest goes to the kings you had placed over us. They rule over our bodies and our cattle as they please. We are in great distress." All right, pause. Just a little moment here, okay? And I know this is ancient news, but you can't help but feel a little bit of a connection and a little bit of familiarity with this. They rule over our bodies and our cattle as they please. Our abundant harvest goes to the kings that you place over us. So, feeling that in the heart, just a little bit of that heartache there, to be quite honest. But no reason to be in distress, right? Just think about that, of making the first move and putting in that little extra effort to worship, to praise, to grow closer with your God. Make sure yourselves, before you go to pray, before you go to worship, clean. Wash your hands up to your elbows, rinse off your feet, rinse off your face before you go to pray or read in the good book. Just consecrate yourself the best way that you know how. Make sure you're blessing your food and offering that up to the Lord as gratitude and thanks. Just do everything in your power to bring yourself closer, and make sure you're putting in that extra effort and making that step just to get closer, right? It takes you to make the first move, and the Lord will amaze you and bless you with all kinds of possibility, knowledge, wisdom, and opportunity. So I will leave you with this, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next week, and we'll go ahead and finish up this book of Nehemiah. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Sorry, I'm just double checking my my spelling here. Israelites. It marks Israelites as being spelled wrong, but we're all good. Alright. God bless you guys. I'll talk to you later.